Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today. My name is Marta Odone, and I'm Marketing Manager at MDR, and I will be your host. Today, we'll be talking about a very popular topic, social media marketing that educators actually like. And we have two wonderful speakers with us who will really dive into how you can move beyond simple follows and likes into real engagement with your audience on social media. So very excited to get started, but first I just want to go over a couple quick things. A couple of people have been asking to want to make sure that everyone's muted, and yes, you are automatically muted as soon as you join, so don't worry about that. We cannot hear your dogs or your babies or your office coworkers in the background. And I did do a quick sound check a few minutes ago. It seems like everyone's confirmed that they can hear me, but if you could just type in if anyone does have any audio or visual problems, you can just type it right into the Q&A or chat window, and that along with any questions that you have throughout today's webinar. You should be able to find the Q&A panel right in the WebEx icon tray, which should be on the right side of your screen. It seems like plenty of people have found that already. And we will be leaving some time at the end for questions. So we'll try to get to as many as we can, and we may also be able to address some of them throughout the webinar as we go. One last thing, we will be recording today's session, and we will send you all a link to the recording video and to the slides in an email by the end of this week. All right, and with that, I'm going to introduce today's speakers. So we have with us Dana Truby. She is the Director of Digital Content and Social Media for our WeAreTeachers media brand and our agency work at MDR. Dana, before joining MDR, she spent over 10 years at Scholastic, where she was the Editorial Director for Professional Media. And we also have Abby Gilman. Abby is a senior strategist here at MDR, and she also does a lot of work with our WeAreTeachers social media channels and works directly with a bunch of our clients. She is also an adjunct professor at Marquette University. So very excited to have you both. Thank you for joining us, and I am going to kick it off to Abby.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be chatting with you today about social media, a topic that's very exciting and something that a lot of our clients are interested in. So really quick before we dive into the agenda, I just sort of wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what Dana and I are doing with our team on a daily basis. So together we lead our social strategy for all of the WeAreTeachers channels. That includes over 10 media channels and social media, as well as a wide portfolio of Facebook groups where we have active educators and administrators engaged every day. And we also manage social media for a wide array of clients. So that could mean anything from implementing a project-based social media strategy to ongoing social media community management and content development. Here's a quick snapshot of our WeAreTeachers social channels. You'll see Facebook is our largest community. We have over 2 million followers on our Facebook channels there, and we're actively getting impressions and video views. But one thing I wanted to call your attention to is that 7.1 million reactions, comments, and shares, which is really engagement on our channels. This boils down to about 20,000 engagements every day. So we are managing hundreds of pieces of content a day and really listening and publishing content that our educators are interested in engaging with. Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram are all also very active. We've definitely seen an increase in interest on Instagram particularly, and educators as a whole are very active on Pinterest too. So we'll go more into some of these channels over the next hour. But just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what we do here at MDR every day.
Hey, Abby, it's Marta. A couple of people are just saying it's a little bit hard to hear you. If you could just maybe try to speak up a little bit.
Okay, will do.
Okay, that was better.
Okay.
Yeah, for us it was. Hopefully that's better. Thank you. Okay, let's carry on.
So what else are we going to talk about today? So we're going to kick it off talking about the state of social. Social media is still uncharted territory. You know, like this isn't something that there are many textbooks written about yet. And so we're kind of, you know, learning, building our plane as we're flying it. And we're constantly facing social challenges, whether it's internally with a team and proving the importance of social media, or trying to figure out what your audience is most interested in. And so we'll talk about building engagement, leveraging your community, and how educators specifically are using social media compared to the American population.
After that, this is Dana, and I'm excited to be here. We love to talk about social. We really want to get into what we find works for us and for our clients. One of the ways we start off with new social clients is usually putting together a playbook of strategies and a set of rules that we think will work for them. And we've gone through this process numerous times to straighten out social channels and get them more successful, building a strong engagement that's natural so that they're spending less money on promotion. And so we want to share some examples with you along the way.
And then after that, we're going to talk about our rules. So rules typically are not a fun thing to talk about, but actually we find that especially when you're working on a big team, it's so important to set these parameters and guidelines for what your brand presence is like in social media. It's also one of the first things we do with our clients when we establish, when we build the social media strategy. What are the rules of engagement for your social channels? This helps us to know, how far we can go with different content, what to engage with, what our brand image should look like. And with any rules, you're going to break them. But at least by setting these rules up front, you have some knowledge of when you're breaking the rules and can do it intentionally. And then last but not least, just like Marta said before, we'll save some time at the end for questions, but definitely share them in the Q&A, and we'll try and address them throughout the webinar too.
One of the things we want you to think about to start with is, we all go to conferences and we know what teachers are like when we're there. They're excited to be there. They come by your booth, they chat with you, they check out your new stuff. You have real conversations that inspire you and your team, and then you can see just how engaged they are. And one of our goals with social is, how do we create that conference feeling of excitement, of knowing that we have great new stuff for them, and how do you create that on your social channels so that they see you as that kind of resource, and they see you as, and they see your social channel as a place of discovery in that same way as the conference floor. Next slide. So we want to start with our three simple B's, which are, first of all, being consistent, creating a strong voice that is informal and chatty and not marketing speak, because we need to speak in the ways of social channels, or else you stand out in like a sore thumb. We really look at how we can be relevant, meaning like how do you separate your social promotion calendar from your social content? What are you sharing with them that is just stuff that they're going to want? And then the last part is teaching is hard, being an administrator is hard. We have to offer them compelling reasons, inspiration, and show that we're really on their side and that we're there for them.
So educators are incredibly, incredibly social. The blue line here shows educators and administrators, and the gray line shows the general American public. So you can see that across the board, educators are using social media more than the rest of the public. Facebook, you know, just by a small, not a small percentage, but Facebook, they're using it more. But particularly looking at Instagram and Twitter, and, Pinterest and Twitter, they're using it twice as much as the average social media user. So we definitely lean into these channels. Each of the channels has its own perks. Facebook is one of those cornerstone platforms where we're always seeing engagement. We make sure to frequently have content there, and it's always successful. But we also are very aware of Instagram and some of the other emerging social channels so that we can test out those communities which might tend to be a little bit younger.
It's interesting to think about this. It makes sense. Educators are connectors. They connect with this community. They're well connected in their neighborhoods, and like the number of families that they know, the number of people they interact with, the sharing of resources. It just shows you that it's an unusual opportunity when you have this audience. Next slide. So here we want to get into, we're going to go into each of these more deeply, but we just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we do and what we work with clients to help them, when we help them with their social channels. One of them is building up a strong content flow that is not just your content, because we have to think about, how can we give them what they want, not just the messages we want to send them. And again, that's separating your promotion schedule from your content schedule. Engaging with influencers. There are extremely powerful teacher and admin influencers on social media, on all of the channels, making sure you're connected to them, that you're sharing them. We're going to talk about that at length. Facebook groups. Facebook groups have changed how we conduct our own business. It's unbelievable for listening, but it also has advantages over a Facebook page, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it that you can't do with a regular Facebook page. So we want to talk to you about that. We want to talk to you about the tough one of thinking about video first, because it's so powerful at all levels. We also want to talk about Instagram. When we go to conferences now, more and more we hear, we know you from Instagram, we know you from Instagram. And we've seen the largest growth in the last 2 years by far in our Instagram channels. Facebook continues to grow week after week, but not with the with the same kind of percentages that Instagram does. And we're starting to look at what we can do with Snapchat. And then lastly, you've seen how the rules on paid social keep changing. The ad manager changes again and again. So we want to think about ways to get more money out of your ad budget and your Facebook budget, and how to think about your paid social in new ways. Our number one rule when we're working with clients, so often we'll go to a channel and we'll see that it's Bullhorn Communication. It's all about the brand, and that is the only thing they talk about. And one of the main things that we find changes the game is when you move from a one-way broadcast channel to thinking about what makes them follow you as a group. What do you have in common with this audience? And a great example is, can you move to the next slide, is Grammarly. Grammarly is a grammar checker with 7.2 million Facebook fans. And how does that happen? That happens because they thought about what do they have in common with their audience. Their audience they care obviously about grammar and writing and reading. And so a lot of what they share is humor about words. They share writing strategies, and so much great content that doesn't have to do with the brand, and it has allowed them to build a channel of 7 million, and to be able to, and then when they're sending out their messages about Grammarly, they have an audience that already loves them and loves their posts. That's a technique that we say. We tend to think about 3 or 4 to 1. You should be posting 3 or 4 times as much content that is just for your audience than it is about you. One of the things we think about is thinking about first personas or categories of content that you and your followers have in common. What are they thinking about and worrying about and looking for, and how does your brand fit with that? This is certainly the same kind of advice that you'll see in mainstream social media, that as soon as you're talking about yourself, you're alone at the party, and you see very little engagement. And the way to build that engagement is finding what you have in common with your audience and sharing as a friend shares. Here's what we both care about. We both care about reading, or we both care about kids and bullying, and thinking about how can you share content that's not just from you, but it comes from a wide variety of sources, so that they see you as not just talking about you, but sharing, but as a source of great information, and it builds your authority. The same thing. People really don't care about your business, what they're there for even. They care about what they're thinking about, and one of our goals is how do we do that in between? How do we talk about the kinds of things that are there for them? We see a question about LinkedIn. We don't focus a lot on LinkedIn. I can pull our numbers. It's the number of educators that are on there, even admins. If they are on there, it's usually about looking for a new job, but it doesn't tend to be. Doesn't tend to be the way it is for us as marketers, where we see LinkedIn as a source of ongoing content. The number of, in our recent poll that we did, the number of educators who visited LinkedIn on a monthly basis was about 9%. Next slide. Here's an example of just some of our recent content, and what we wanted to get you thinking about was the many ways we find in. We try to think about not just promoting content that is from our clients, but we also try to think about their whole lives. The stress, the finances, what they're looking for their students, how their all of their circumstances as the school as a workplace, and feed all of that content, and that gives us a wide variety of ways into them, in order that educators will look at our content and say, hey, this is relevant to me.
One of our second tips is reaching out and engaging with influencers. So we've seen incredible success by leveraging these relationships with influencers. Influencers don't have to be huge influencers. We leverage influencers with both small engaged audiences, which could be 1,000 followers, all the way up into the hundreds of thousands of followers. Educators are always influencers. Dana sort of mentioned this earlier on, but educators are influencers within their community and with their students and parents and their school. But the teachers who we're trying to engage with as influencers are also influencers to other influencers. So often teachers are the only adults in the room. They're talking to students all day long, and they turn to social media to get other educators' perspectives, to relate with them, to laugh with them, sometimes to to share perspectives on different hot button topics. And so that's why we leverage our influencers to help put a personality and a face behind some of these pieces of content. So there are a couple of ways that we connect with our influencers. One is a traditional paid campaign. This is where we approach an influencer and say, for X amount of dollars, would you please write a review about this product or share a post about this product? The benefit with these types of campaigns is that the influencers publish content in their own voice. They take user-generated content, so photos or videos of the product, that is so much more beneficial than a typical product image, and they endorse the product. These often, while they should come with a sponsorship tag, so they have to disclose that the content is sponsored, but I think they're still beneficial to the community. A lot of followers recognize that influencers need a source of income, and so they are still endorsing brands that they feel passionately about. The second campaign that we do is a surprise and delight campaign, and this is not paid. So what we do for these types of campaigns is we reach out to influencers and we say, we think you rock, we think you'd love this product, can we send you a box of goodies or a product? And the product that they receive is free, but they can publish content about the content on their own terms. Oftentimes they publish it as an Instagram story or an Instagram post or a tweet, but this content does not need to include that sponsored tag because they're not being paid for it, and so it feels a little bit more grassroots and a little bit more organic. We've seen a ton of success with this type of content.
But before we even get to that, when we're working with clients setting up new channels, one of the things we really do is we put together a list of prominent social media users who we want them to follow and to either retweet or regram, and in order to get the word out and get them aware of your channel. It's still flattering. It's flattering when you retweet, when you regram a teacher's content, and it also makes you not standing outside of education, but actually part of it and celebrating what is happening. One of the questions here that we see is, are principals' engagement patterns different, and what channels do they use? Principals and administrators are certainly heavy on Twitter. We're seeing a lot of influencers on Instagram as well, celebrating what they do in the, celebrating what's happening in their schools, sharing their leadership advice. So, like on our School Leaders Now channels, we work very hard to stay connected to leading administrators, leading thinkers, and sharing what they're doing and making sure that they see what we do. At the same time, we do see a lot of use of Facebook. I mean, Facebook is the universal. We'll be talking about groups later, but our Principal Life group, which we started about a year ago, now has 10,000 members who are all principals, or mostly building leadership, but also some district level. And it's amazing the kind of engagement we are getting because, you know, they're alone in their buildings. They don't actually have that many people to share ideas with. And so we have a very active Principal Life group with dozens of posts to each other a day asking questions about, hey, what do you think of this program? Hey, what should I do with this problem? What would you do? What happens at your school? So one thing, I think that there tends to be a belief that somehow principals and district leaders are very different creatures than teachers. There is a difference in the subjects they engage with, but we see that they may use social slightly differently, but less differently than is often assumed. Let's go on.
So if you're not using influencer campaigns yet, here's just a little more ammo for why you should be leveraging influencer campaigns. these definitely have ramped up over the last few years. Specifically this year, 48% of marketers plan to use influencer campaigns. And 71% of marketers found influencer campaigns to be more successful than traditional marketing. Next slide. So there are a couple of ways that we engage with influencers. We mentioned traditional campaigns and surprise and delight campaigns, but also just giving them shout outs. So consistently we feature a teacher every Friday. We do a Teacher Follow Friday, and we pick one influencer or teacher. I mean, influencer could be big or small to feature on our channel. And this is something that our community looks forward to every week because they're really looking for other influencers to follow who could inspire them, who could give them great ideas. And this is a great way to help lift some of those teachers up and put a face to our brand. And when we're leveraging influencer campaigns, this goes for both education and non-education industries. So teachers as influencers within their communities, we send them products that are consumer products, not necessarily education products, and they're able to help spread the word and endorse those products with parents, community members, in addition to other educators as well.
Next slide. Luckily, it's Facebook groups because we started talking about that. A couple of years ago, we got very serious about our Facebook groups. We started our first one, which was called Teacher Helpline. And what we wanted it to be, because we got so many questions to our page where they just wanted advice, and we would sometimes share those questions, but after a while we were getting too many of those questions. So we started a group where teachers could answer each other. And then after that, we spread it to a high school group, to the principal life group, where principals could talk to each other, and we started a new teacher group. And the main thing, while we share some content there, is we want to give them a private space where they can interact. We also, can you add the next slide? We also work with clients to help them develop a Facebook group. It's not an appropriate solution for every client, but if you have devotees of a particular product who need ongoing support, or if you have a contest, like some of the ones that we've done have been to support like along a contest that teachers and students do together so that they can get ongoing ideas and you can communicate with them regularly. One of the things that's great about it is first it's closed so that responders can feel more free to communicate. The other thing is that unless you say otherwise, every post in a group automatically appears in your feed. So it's a way to be sure that you're reaching them. The other thing we use it for is groups are searchable. We use it as a listening tool. We use it to text. We might say, hey, would you like, we're designing posters. Which of these three do you like best? Or we may say, here are titles. Which one do you like? Or we might listen to what are they saying about the job market and search and do research in it in that way. So it's a great ongoing listening tool, and it's a great way to communicate with the sub-market. In addition to your page. We're seeing groups on the rise. We were part of a special Facebook conference recently, about a year ago, where they brought in leaders from 100 groups to talk about how they were using groups and to increase the power of them. Facebook has as part of their moving away from brands, they've given groups a lot of spotlight and a lot of new tools. So it's something that that opens up possibilities as you see other ones shutting down. We also see how it's very much changed the parenting market. And we're seeing the same in education, where there are very specialized groups. Here's a quick look at ours and some of the kinds of comments that they talk about. One of the questions that I'm seeing here before we go on is, what's a good ratio of fun and entertaining posts to informative educational? That's a great question. What we try to see is think about your fun and entertaining posts. Those help to get your views up, and the more views you have on those posts, the more all of your posts will be viewed, and it will increase your overall engagement. If you have posts that reach a lot of audience, what Facebook learns is, oh, that people are interested in their posts and they're more likely to show them. We would say about half and half. Fun can still be informative, though. I think one of the goals here is, how can we bridge that balance? Next slide.
We also see video as a huge opportunity. We've noticed this over the course of the last couple of years, but particularly in 2018, it's been even more of an emphasis. So we see social channels leaning into this type of video, whether it's Facebook launching their Watch or Instagram launching Instagram Live. We found that teachers are hungry for video too. And video doesn't always need to be a full production. It could be a DIY, a live interview, or just a compelling user-generated piece of video. Teachers are just looking for these emotional and informational connections through video. So one of the questions that we hear is, like, how do you evaluate or quantify the value of social media following and engagement, so that it's not just social media for the sake of social media? And one of the answers to this is actually video. So we all have leaders that we have to explain the importance of social media to, or stakeholders or board members, and often they say engagement is great, but we really care about conversions or purchases. And video is an excellent tool for driving those actionable results. And the way that we do that is through retargeting ads. So say, for example, this pool noodles video has 22 million views on it. So teachers are watching these DIY videos about how to use pool noodles for fraction activities in their classrooms or other activities. And then afterwards, we can retarget them with an ad that is driving to a pool noodle purchase, so that it's more of a natural experience, and we can move them further down the funnel this way.
Or more likely, like what we're doing always when we put out content, we're thinking about, how can we build an audience off of that content? What can we learn about who's seeing this? So if we see this, we know that the audience that cares about this is probably K-6. They teach math. So therefore, there are all kinds of math products we could retarget them with, and all kinds of math content. And so what we'll do is we'll take single pieces of content or groups of content and build an audience out of what that tells us about this person. If they're interested in this, what else will they be interested in, so that we can continue to build upon that engagement and send them down funnels, and make sure that, you know, if we're sharing a piece of content that is a light content marketing piece, that we can follow up with a more direct ad.
I think that we often hear video and we think it's a daunting task. We don't have a staff to produce a video or the resources to do it, but there are lots of ways that we can produce video in efficient ways to get these types of results. And if you're still on the fence about video, here's a few more stats to help you make up your mind on it. So video is one of the most searched things, and by 2019 it will account for 85% of search. and it's shared more than 12 times more than regular text and images, so helping to create that viral sensation across social media. The next slide shows a few of, go ahead, Dana.
No, go on.
The next slide shows a few videos that we've produced, just different types of videos. So the one on the left is for Pepsi. It's a music video, and it features different recycling elements throughout the video, helping promote their recycling campaign. And the one on the right is a live video that we produced from ILA with an author. And this kind of goes back to one of the original slides we spoke about, and bringing that conference experience to life every day. So we know that not every teacher can attend every conference as much as they would love to. How can we bring this experience to them in their virtually? And by conducting these Facebook Live interviews or live demonstrations, we're able to bring that event to them through their cell phone or through their computer screen. They're actually able to comment and ask questions to the person who's being interviewed, and it's a really great experience.
We have a question here about how do you encourage continued related engagements once a video funnel is established? Is there a way to retarget viewers of a video? That's one of the great things about video, even one that's 3 or 4 seconds long, is that you can retarget it. So in the case of our client, which in this case is Recycle Rally, which is a school program, we're able to retarget everyone who's seen this video with other Recycle Rally content, get them excited about signing up for a school recycling program, and then we can also build around other pieces of content about recycling that we might want to use. The Facebook Live, this is an author, so we can do, in this case, we would retarget this audience with advertisements for her book or other pieces of her content, and continue that cycle and continue to learn more about that audience.
Another question about video that we have is what length of videos is appropriate? And this is an answer that's always evolving. So a year or so ago, we might have said we should really aim for a minute or under, 3 minutes or under max. But given the emphasis on platforms like Facebook Watch, or watching how the industry is shifting to video consumption from social channels versus the traditional broadcast media, even if you just look at, teenagers or young adults, video consumption habits, they are watching YouTube for things. They're watching shows on Hulu or Facebook Watch. Because of these things, we're seeing more success with videos that are longer than we ever have before. People's attention spans are short, but if you have a compelling story to tell and you tell it in an effective way, you can definitely get away with a longer video than you could have, say, a year or two ago. The next thing that we wanted to talk about is how important Instagram and Snapchat is. Speaking of that younger generation, we definitely see a big emphasis in Instagram and Snapchat too. So Instagram, owned by Facebook, is definitely picking up some of those characteristics of Snapchat, whether it's Instagram stories or messaging, Instagram Live, in a way to gather and attract that younger consumer. Next slide.
Can you explain the difference, the 10K follower, Abby?
Yes. So Instagram allows you to, anyone can publish a story on Instagram, and it's a great way to kind of get some live content out there. But Instagram is significantly used on mobile devices, and once you surpass that 10,000 follower level, you're able to attach links and drive traffic from your Instagram stories. So this has been really beneficial for us in capturing younger teachers and driving them to traffic to read articles from their phones. So we use our Instagram stories to publish a snapshot of content every single day. We publish 3 of our articles in an Instagram story, and teachers click through from that Instagram story to read the full article on our website. This is something that was launched a little over a year ago, but it is really critical that you surpass that 10,000 follower count in order to activate that link feature. And in order to get to that 10,000 follower count, here are a few tips. You can leverage hashtags. We recommend putting together a gallery of hashtags, so do some research on hashtags that are actively used in the audiences that you're hoping to attract. That could be the Teachers Follow Teachers, or hashtag InstaTeacher, and leverage those hashtags within your posts to help get more traction and community from those. And it's not just a Bullhorn, so absolutely be engaging with teachers. Comment on their posts. It goes a long way. Think about if one of your favorite brands commented on one of your posts, you really feel recognized and acknowledged, and creating those relationships is so meaningful. And last but not least, and this seems like an obvious thing, but we can't stress it enough, buying followers is absolutely not the way to grow your community. It's often noticed by Instagram, so it could result in your account being shut down, but it is not a good way to build engagement for your community.
Do you want to explain maybe a little bit about the follow contest or loop
yeah,
giveaway?
Let's talk about that. If you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the types of content that resonate well on Instagram. So Instagram's really a place for user-generated, curated, real content. It's not meant to be overly staged. It's meant to be authentic and genuine, not ad-driven. So if you do a quick audit of your brand Instagram account and see things that are really product-driven or have heavy calls to action, maybe have a little bit of a heart-to-heart with your content strategy and think of how you can start to incorporate some more authentic, genuine content to offset that product content. Dana is asking about the follow contests, and this is a great way to build your community. It's through an Instagram loop giveaway where you would partner with several influencers, and each influencer publishes a post encouraging you to follow them and the next Instagram influencer tag, and at the end they would follow all of the brands for their chance to win a prize. And these are really commonly used, especially in the teacher community, and it's a nice way to help connect with influencers, drive engagement, and build community for your brand.
The video in the middle is Instagram content, but it's an example of a influencer effort that we did where we had some downloadable bookmarks that we designed, but we had them printed and sent to a group of influencers because we knew that they would then show them off on Instagram and Facebook, and that drives more traffic to our site as well as builds up the love with us and influential teacher Instagrammers.
So we've talked about Instagram quite a bit, and it is definitely a hot channel and something that we're leaning on more and more, and we're capturing a younger teacher audience in this space as well and driving mobile traffic, which are both very important to us. With that said, we're absolutely keeping our eye on Snapchat. It's growing at a rapid pace. It's, for example, daily active users on Twitter are 68 million. Daily active users on Snapchat are 191. So this is no platform to look past. It's absolutely something that's on the rise. We're not saying you need to go and start Snapchatting tomorrow, But as you consider your strategies for upcoming years, think about how you could begin leveraging or connecting with people in that channel, even if that just means by connecting with influencers in Snapchat to help tell your brand story. That is also a great way to engage in Snapchat.
Before we move into ad spending, I'd like to talk about Pinterest for a moment. You saw in the beginning just the overwhelming use among educators. That's particularly true for the K-6 market, who have so many ideas to organize and use it for that. One of the things we often work with clients on is, how to make sure that absolutely all of their content is organized and organized in the way that teachers would organize and search for it, understanding that they're using it as teacher Google. I mean, one of the things they often say to us is like, if they're looking for a lesson plan or an idea for their classroom, if they were to search on Google, there's just too much and they're going to get the wrong thing. So, we left it out to some degree here because we tend to think of it in terms of SEO, like that you really want to work on Pinterest at the same time that you're thinking about the rest of your SEO strategy. How can you make sure you come up for the right words? How can you maximize your content, maximize your board? We've worked with a number of clients to reorganize, reset, work on keywords in order to do precisely that kind of work. For us, it's also, unlike the rest of social, it's your long-term play. It allows you it allows you to drive traffic year after year when the same time of year comes back around and it's back to school and they're searching those same words. You'll see increases to old traffic. It probably drives about 30% of our traffic, which is really notable. So if it hasn't been a priority for you, taking time to think about how can you make the most of Pinterest is a really good long-term play. We want to talk about ad spending beyond the booth. One of the things that came up before was social for social sake, and understanding that if you build your organic, all of your posts will do better. If you build your engagement, all of your posts will do better, and your ad spending costs will decrease notably. And it will not take as much to reach a larger audience because they start with the audience that the post would naturally get, and they move from there. And it's very much exponential. So $50 at one brand with a big audience, what it gives them, they might get an extra 50,000 followers, where a brand with low interaction might get 5,000 followers, might get 5,000 views for the same. So building that organic should always be that first priority. Ad spending is what you do when you is a workaround. And also, the more that you're building that organic, it allows you to do retargeting, which is more powerful than that first boost that is just seen as an ad and often ignored. Next slide. So we talked about growing organic. We think the first place that people go to is Facebook ads. Thinking about Pinterest ads, paid Twitter is another way to go. Thinking about retargeting. A mistake that we often see is putting out a single creative. We recommend like 5 different creatives and waiting and putting up a post and waiting to see which ones have the best response, and then dropping the images or the second creatives that don't. It gets the most out of your money. And then really working to how can you use retargeting ads to build audiences that you know have responded to previous content, and that's a second touch and a third touch, and more likely to be effective. Finally, these are the 6 rules. We have a large social staff at this point, and one of the things we say most often is talk like a person. That social media needs to not be filled with jargon. You need to not use marketing speak. It should be the everyday language that we all live in. And you know, we joke never say rigor, because when we poll teachers about which jargon they hate the most, that is by far the most hated word. Using real photos, we see the same classroom stock, and when you're trying to be authentic and real, the more that you can share real photos instead of stock photos, the best, or at least look deeper down and not take things off the first and second page. Optimizing posts, another mistake we see too often is that posting to multiple channels, like for example using hashtags on Facebook, which isn't a place for hashtags, or not making the most out of the post, not stopping and making sure that you, for example, with a Facebook post, you have 4 opportunities. You have the image, you have the description and the title, you have the comment at the top. Are each of those approaching the content in a different way, serving a different purpose so that you can get the most out of it? Are you making sure your photos are strong? Thinking about what do people respond to on social media, the 3 E's, the answer is puppies. The second answer is probably puppies. And thinking about what makes people respond are things that touch their emotions, things that teach them something and make them feel interested or smart. Like, why do I share? Hey, this is interesting, and I think you'll think it's interesting too. Or, hey, this meant something to me. It made me mad, or it made me sad, or it made me feel strongly, and that's another reason I would share it. And the last is entertaining, that, you know, when people are standing on a line and going through their phones, and understand that most of the time they are on their phones. That's 70%. So how are you catching them as they scroll by? They want to feel something, they want to be taught something, or they want to be amused or interested. Thinking video first, to go back to that, like how, when you think about it, instead of thinking about, okay, let's do a blog on that, you know, what's a quick video you could do on it? There are many video softwares that are as easy to use and put together as a PowerPoint, and they can be amazingly effective using just words and still images. And then lastly, once again, to go back to that important point that as a brand, we need to stand in the background and celebrate not our products, but what educators and kids can do with them, and to make them the stars and to talk about them first. And you see that, like when you see the sentences you write on social, who is the subject of that sentence? Is it you? Is it your product? It makes such a big difference if you put the educators and the students first and say, students are doing this with this. Isn't that amazing? Rather than saying, our product is amazing. And so one of the things we really work on is getting that language and showcasing, and let them be the stars of the show, and that very much is about increases the connection. Next slide. Questions. We tried to talk fast and we went through a lot, but we'd love to answer some quick questions.
Hi guys, it's Marta. Oh, I was just going to say, if you guys see, I know you guys can see some of these questions coming in, so feel free to just answer any ones that we can get to in the next couple of minutes. I know some people might have to jump off, but we will be here. And also, just for everyone else who we didn't get to your question, we will definitely be getting back to you individually in the next week or so to make sure everything gets addressed. And in case I don't get to say it at the end, thank you everyone for joining us today and for taking the time to participate and for all of your engagement with all these great questions. We really appreciate it. And I'll give it back to Dana and Abby now.
A quick question we saw are what kind of video software are we talking about? There's a number of examples. We can put together a list, and Marta can share that out when she shares out the presentation for ones we recommend. Another question is optimum number of hashtags for Twitter. It tends to be much lower than Instagram. It's just a style difference. I would say 3 to 4. What would you say, Abby?
I think we try to grab like sometimes up to 11. Oh, sorry. For Twitter, 3 to 4 is appropriate. On Instagram, we go for upwards of 11.
Here's a question on how do you find teachers to join a Facebook group. One of the things you can do is, you can have an ad to boost your Facebook group. You can send out an email offering to join it. One of the things that we do is make sure that we add it to all of our pieces of content. So, for example, on School Leaders Now, there's a tagline at the end of every blog article that, hey, want to hear more talk, principal talk? Join our Facebook group, and that drives a lot of traffic.
I also see a question about how do you accomplish some of this social media success when you don't have an organization with a full-time social media person. I feel you. There are a lot of teams like this. You are not alone. One of the ways you can do that is by attending webinars like this and helping to increase your knowledge and find ways to be efficient. You can also try to lean on agencies like ours to help offset some of those workload issues. We're happy to help. But if you are one of those one-man shows that's doing email and ads and writing blog content and doing social media, bless your heart, and know that there are ways to be efficient. I think leveraging a tool like Sprout Social, where you can publish everything in one spot and kind of keep an eye on your calendar, is a really great way to get started so that you're not natively going into each of the platforms that can take up a lot of time.
Another question people asked about summer engagement. Summer is actually our largest engagement. We see it dips in June. People are tired. They're tired of talking about school. But July and August are planning times, and they tend to drive, we tend to show our biggest numbers of the year. Then they're gathering ideas, they're thinking, they're open. We also see, it's very different than with those of us who, work in offices and have access to desks all day. We see a lot of late night, early morning, and a lot of vacation activity. After Christmas, we see a lot of activity then.
I also see how often should you post new content and can you recycle content? That's a great question, and I think it depends brand by brand. It also depends how much of how many resources you have to develop content. Typically, we try to publish frequently. We see a lot of success by publishing 10 posts a day on our Facebook channel. This is something that not a lot of brands do, but we think, to Dana's point earlier, it's so important to be publishing content not just about us, but about what our audience wants to see, and so we want to make sure that we're offsetting the content that is our brand focus with content that is relevant within the education industry. You can recycle content too, so we often dive into the well of posts that did really well this time last year. Sometimes we'll post them as is, and sometimes we'll give them a facelift. Put some new colors behind it, redo how the content works, and publish it. So it's sort of like recycling it, but just with a little bit of a jazzing it up.
And when we're working with smaller brands, we tend to recommend 3 to 4 posts a day. That gives you room to have other kinds of posts besides yours, your own. Promotional posts, it gives you room for other kinds of posts. We have a question here about ethics of influencers. That was an interesting article, and it is a question. It's very important to make sure that you're very upfront when you're working with influencers, and that they are as well with promoted posts. I mean, when you're starting with them, you're really trying to connect and make sure they see you and they're likely to see you. But we don't find that, since we tend to be working with them on smaller programs, like if you're just sharing books or you're sharing products, you're not talking about bringing them in on multi-$100,000 products, that it's very easy to manage. Abby, you want to take one more question?
Sure. I see a question about where do you start if you're trying to become an influencer and go to organization for a specific area in the education world. I think we gave some awesome tips earlier in the webinar about how to establish your brand and how to leverage hashtags, absolutely connecting with other influencers and other brands so that they're able to kind of endorse you and give you that camaraderie in the social space, so that you're not just in an echo chamber publishing content on your own. Those are some great tips, but just actively engaging and being an active listener also to what your audience is wanting to engage with and read.
All right, thank you guys so much for answering a bunch of those questions. That was like rapid fire. There were still a bunch more though, so I know we're a little after the time, so we're going to wrap up. Just a big thank you again to everyone for joining, and to Abby and Dana for being our speakers. And just watch out in your email inbox this week for a copy of the recording and the slides. All right,
thank
you guys.